It's funny how the very first video of 2019 was about a questionable VR revealed for Shadow Paladin, and the very first video of 2020 is yet again about the reveal of a very questionable VR for Shadow Paladin. It's funny how the world works sometimes.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to the very first Cardfight update of 2020. I hope you guys had a wonderful New Year's evening or New Year's celebration, as we're gonna dive into some amazing videos right from the start to kick off 2020 with a bang. And Bushro did that in their own ways, as they finally revealed the VR for Shadow Paladin, as that is of course Claret Sword Dragon. However, we already knew how the card would work, and this only confirmed our beliefs. But with some other cards that were revealed a couple of days before and some cards that were sprinkled in between, we now have a better understanding what this new deck for Shadow Paladin is going to look like and how it's going to function. So without further ado, I want to go over these cards, how these skills works and how they interact with each other, and what we can expect of the new Shadow Paladin once Team Dragon's Vanity drops the Japanese format. You guys really enjoyed the new format that I tried with the previous Cardfight update, so I'm gonna keep doing this for this type of video and maybe even for the set reviews, where we're gonna dive into the VR first so we have an understanding what this will do, and then we're gonna take a look at all the different support cards and then circle back to the VR to really have a better understanding on how the whole package is supposed to look. Let's take a look at the skill for Claret Sword Dragon. So the new VR for Shadow Paladin has the following two abilities. His first ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, look at the 3 cards from the top of your deck, put any number of grade 1 cards from among them into your drop zone and shuffle your deck. This unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn for each card put into your drop zone. And then the second ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. Once per turn, at the end of the battle it attacked, cost, counter plus 1, and bind 7 grade 1 cards from your drop zone, stand this unit, and it drives -1 until the end of turn. So his first ability allows you to mill some grade 1s to the drop zone, potentially get some power boost, and its second ability allows him to restand while binding a couple of grade 1s from the drop zone. His first ability allows you to view his second ability in some regards, and if you can combine the two, you can have a potential very strong restander, which doesn't minus you to keep in mind. So if you combine this with Force 2, you can have a deadly Vanguard center column that can swing hard if you're a bit lucky with the milling cards. So now that we have a basic understanding how Claret Sword works, let's take a look at the support cards and see how this engine works and how we can really utilize his two abilities. First off, I want to take a look at the main grade 2 support line, and that is Morian Spear Dragon. And its ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. Once per turn, cost Soul plus 1 and discard a card from your hand. Draw a card, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. If a grade 1 was discarded for this cost, plus 10k instead of plus 5k. So this is a pretty solid cycle card, as we can ditch and draw, but because it costs a Soul Blast, it is a bit more expensive than your typical cycle card, but we do get a power boost in exchange for that. So for the Soul Blast we get plus 5k power. However, this is actually a pretty solid skill with everything attached to it, because we Soul Blast one and it's a grade 2 that can potentially be a Vanguard or Rearguard. So if you write this thing, we can Soul Blast a grade 1, so we already put an extra grade 1 in our drop zone, which we can use for Claret Sword and some other cards. And then we can discard potentially another grade 1, so we can already put 2 into the drop zone, and then this card will gain plus 10k. Meaning we cycle, so we get to our combo pieces or our key pieces quicker. We can have potentially a 20k beater on our Vanguard Circle, which is a pretty good number if we went first, because our opponent has probably no good way to keep blocking or guarding, especially if they want to mitigate the potential of getting a trigger in our drive check. So this allows us to have some pretty good solid offensive plays in the early game, but also potentially late game, as we can have it as a 20k side lane on its own without a booster. And with a booster, it's a 28k column, and that is a pretty good high number you're beating for almost no cost, or at least no issue. So Morian Spear Dragon, pretty solid card. Then we get the main grade 1 support card for Claret Sword Dragon, as we have Blue Espada Dragon. And this grade 1 has the ability Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, look at the 3 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 Claret Sword Dragon or Morian Spear Dragon, so the grade 2 we just talked about, from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest into your drop zone, and if your drop zone has 5 or more grade 1 cards, this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So this card is pretty versatile in any state of the game. In the early game, if you ride this as your grade 1, you could potentially fetch your grade 2 or your grade 3 ride for the following turn, so you can help with some consistency, and otherwise you can use it to plus on hand to have some extra solid beaters for the sides. And the fact that you mill everything might be a little bit bad, but if in those top 3 are some extra grade 1s, then you're gonna fuel your other cards like Claret Sword Dragon, maybe even Blue Espada Dragon himself, because in the late game, when you already have 5 grade 1s in your drop zone, then this thing becomes an 18k attacker or an 80k booster. You're never gonna get this thing off on your first turn, especially if you ride it, because that's impossible. But probably maybe the next turn or the turn after that, you can accomplish this and you have a solid beater. This, in combination with Moria's Spear Dragon, can potentially create a 38k column for a Soul Blast. That's pretty insane. Especially if we combine it with Claret Sword Dragon, if we want to go for Force 2, then we don't need those extra 10k power because we're already generating such high numbers without any much problem. And having the extra crit on top of it is pretty deadly. So this is a pretty solid card as it allows us to plus. It is a good early game card and an excellent mid to late game card. There is almost no scenario where placing this thing onto the board is a negative thing. You're always going to benefit from its ability in some kind of way. Now that we have an understanding what the main support of Claret Sword is going to do, we can take a look at 2 grade 2s that support the deck in different kinds of ways depending on your playstyle that can help you to make the perfect deck for you. And the first grade 2 we're going to take a look at is Dark Pride Dragon. This grade 2 has the following ability, and it's Auto Vanguard the Vanguard Circle. When placed, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn, and you may put 3 cards from the top of your deck into your drop zone. If a grade 1 was put, cost counter plus 1 and draw a card. So this is somewhat similar to Blue Espada Dragon, that you check the top 3 and you basically mill them without a search. So you can turbo out for your grade 1s in your drop zone, so you can view cards like Blue Espada Dragon or Claret Sword Dragon with its recent ability. And if you happen to mill a grade 1 from those cards, you can actually plus of it with a cost of counterblast. And the fact that it gains plus 5k makes it also a solid beater because it's a 15k, with an 8k is 23, and if we combine it with Blue Espada Dragon, that is potentially a 33k column for no cost. Literally no cost. And that's also a big thing about these cards. There aren't really a lot of costs on these cards. Sure, this counterblast costs for a draw, but that's similar to Swordbreaker. So that's actually pretty good. So now we have more options to plus. And the other cost that we had was Moria's Spear Dragon with the Soul Blast. And then we have Claret Sword Dragon for the potential cost of 1 counterblast for the restand, which in most cases you're only gonna use once, if you're super lucky, twice in a game. So currently the new Shadow Paladin deck is going to look to be a lot cheaper in cost efficiency. So this is a pretty good card as it allows you to make a more turbo style deck to really mill out through your deck to get those grade 1s in your drop zone to activate all kinds of effects. But isn't super good on a beater side of things. That's where we have the following grade 2 for. As we have a Knight of Stun and Rage, Makmorna, and its abilities are Continuous Rearguard Circle. When it would attack, this unit cannot attack unless you retire one of your other rearguards. And the second ability is Continuous Rearguard Circle. If your drop zone has 3 or more grade 1 cards, this unit gets power plus 15k. The reason why this is a pretty good support card for the new Claret Sword Dragon deck is because of Nemain. Because Nemain's most utility function is to filter your deck through with all your grade 1s to get more crits or get your key pieces much quicker to hand. But it does clutter up the board with useless cards as there are just 5k units on the board, and the old Shadow Paladin could use them to sacrifice them with Phantom Blaster Dragon, but with the new build that we have with Mortared Phantom, not so much. So having a card like this is a very good way to make Nemain even better, because if we use Nemain in the early game and we get 1 extra free unit onto the board, we can use Makmarna on grade 2 to mill that card and give it and have a 25k beater for actually no cost, because plussing off Nemain is also free. And if we then combine it with Moria's Spear Dragon, you can get this 15k almost every single time on grade 2, because right Moria's Spear Dragon, you Soul Blast a grade 1, you discard a grade 1, and then you sacrifice one of the extra called Nemains with Makmorna, and then you have a pretty solid beater because you have a 20k Vanguard and a 25k side lane, whatever what you have left on these sides. And if you then activate a Blue Espada Dragon and you happen to mill 2 grade 1s, then you have another 18k unit or booster on the board, which basically makes insane numbers pretty fast and pretty early on. So this allows you to have a more aggressive aggro playstyle than instead of the turboing playstyle that you have with Dark Dragon. Now that we've taken a look at all the different support cards, we can go back to Claret Sword Dragon and analyze how good this card is, and with all the extra support cards, how the deck might look like and how it would function. We've seen a lot of cards that can mill the top cards of our deck and to put a significant amount of cards into the drop zone and hopefully get a couple of grade 1s. Claret Sword Dragon himself only mills grade 1, so this helps a bit with deck out issues because Dark Dragon and Blue Espada Dragon just generically mill the top 3 indiscriminately. So you're going to go fast through your deck if you run both those cards and you happen to call them a couple of times on the board. Claret Sword Dragon at least mitigates that by only being able to mill the grade 1s. But at the same time, with Claret Sword, you actually want to hit those grade 1s to give the extra power when you ride it. So there's something to say to run Dark Dragon, and there's something to say to not run it, so you have less chance of milling your grade 1s and save them for Claret Sword Dragon himself. But then we have other cards like the main, which is actually pretty useful for this deck, as you can use the main and all the other grade 1s with 5k power to really amp up the amount of grade 1s you can put into the drop zone as early on, so you can activate cards like Blue Espada Dragon and Claret Sword Dragon as soon as possible. Because with all these powers you can generate, as we have more Spear Dragon that can become a 20k beater, we have Blue Espada that can become an 80k booster, and of course Magmorna that can become a 25k beater, and potentially Claret Sword Dragon himself that can get an increase of 10, 20 or 30k. There might be a good incentive to go for Force 2, and if we can manage to get Claret Sword Dragon off on turn 3 the moment that we ride, so plus the restand and all those powers, you can potentially end games right then and there, or at least cripple your opponent in such a hard position that next turn they will fall over your onslaught. However, there is a big problem with this deck, and everybody that looked at the card might notice that immediately. And that's the fact that you need to bind 7 grade 1s from drop zone to activate the restand. The new deck most likely is going to run a shit ton of grade 1s. More than your typical deck. Usually we run around 11, 12, maybe 13 grade 1s in your typical lineup. This deck, at least 14, maybe 16, depending on how we're gonna play. Most likely, it doesn't look like that we're gonna get a good support grade 3. So you might only run Claret Sword Dragon as a grade 3, so you open up more spots for extra grade 1s. And it doesn't really negatively impact your ride consistency, as for one, we have Blue Espada Dragon, but we also have the main, so we can filter out a couple of those grade 1s as fast as possible, so we have higher chance of getting our grade 2s and grade 3s to hand. But another thing is, and this is just speculation at this point, but we still have a triple R left, and it is potentially a grade 1, and what's possible is if that grade 1 has an ability that allows it to somehow be able to put itself back into the drop zone if it's binded through an effect, like Claret Sword Dragon, for example. Or maybe a grade 1 that then shoves itself back into the deck. At least a way that you can keep the significant amount of grade 1s in your drop zone. Then we have a pretty good card and deck engine on our hands. There is an issue because if you use Claret Sword Dragon's ability, you lose the potential power with Magmorna, as that's a continuous ability. But if we have a triple R grade 1 that can then put itself back into the drop zone when it's bound by Claret Sword Dragon or a non-specific unit's ability, then you can activate all these cards like Blue Espada Dragon, Magmorna, Claret Sword Dragon on a more consistent basis without having the drawback that once you activate Claret Sword Dragon, your deck becomes a lot weaker. And if that's only one card, we have potentially 4 grade 1s that can keep coming back, and it allows the deck to be a lot more aggressive, because if you manage to put all 4s in the drop zone, you only have to get 3 other grade 1s each and every single turn to be able to resend your Claret Sword Dragon, or to allow, or to be maybe to activate other kinds of abilities. But we have to wait and see until we get the rest of the support for Shadow Paladin, as there is a lot of potential for this deck. Currently, they're generating a lot of power. They're able to fill their drop zone pretty quickly with grade 1s in some kind of shape or form, either with active abilities or with the main that can search out grade 1s themselves. But we have to wait and see until the rest of the support to really get an understanding of how this deck might reshape in a different kind of way, as there are still some big problems that we have to overcome to make this deck a pretty solid contender. But currently it looks to be like a fun deck, a fun concept, And if it's not going to get that grade 1 or a similar card that allows it to function in that way, we might finally have a more cheaper alternative of Shadow Paladin on our hands that isn't about $300 to build. So we have to wait and see what the rest of the cards are. But we at least know that the next coming days we're going to get some interesting card of the days reveals, because Bushot gave us a short little calendar where we saw which cards are going to release on the coming next days. As on New Year's Eve we got Foibles revealed, then they revealed that of course on January the 1st, today, we got Claret Sword Dragon, and tomorrow, or probably around the time that this video is gonna be live on YouTube, we know the skill of Narukami's Anastasia. Currently it's not a PG, she was always a PG, but we can see it's a normal grade 1 with 7k. So I'm very curious of what her ability is going to be. I've always been a fan of her art style, so I'm probably going to put it in my deck. And as soon as it's double rare, there's a high chance she's actually good. Maybe she will give us some defensive skill, maybe in some kind of shape that we can get pluses, because Vanquisher also minus us in hand. So if she could maybe mitigate the problem, then that will retain her defensive-like nature. So I'm very curious what they're going to do with her. And the day after that, on January the 3rd, we're going to get the old Searcher for Valios. So I'm very interested what that's going to be, as it was the old Searcher for Valios. Maybe it's going to be a Searcher for Last Card Revan. Maybe it's also going to retain the recent ability it has, and in this case be similar to the grade 1 that we have seen before, that once it rests by an ability it restands immediately. That would also be pretty neat if it has that similar kind of effect. So I'm curious of what they're going to do with him, and it looks to be that we're going to get some awesome reveals right at the beginning of the year. So yeah, keep yourself posted, and once we get some more awesome reveals, I'm bound to cover them on the channel and give you guys some insight of how these cards might interact, how good they are, maybe what you can do with them, and all the typical stuff that you come to use from this channel. And that basically concludes the very first Cardfight update of 2020. We got some very interesting reveals. It might not be as strong as people had hoped for Shadow Paladin. I personally am very curious of what this deck might bring and what other cards that we're going to get, because there's still a lot of potential left and a lot of options. I'm hoping for that grade 1, but we might get something else that works in a different kind of way. So we have to wait to see what we're going to get. Let me at least know in the comments down below what you guys think of these cards and what they might bring for Shadow Paladin. Are you excited? Are you disappointed? Are you expecting a certain kind of ability or not? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, as there is yet again a lot to think about. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters for making this video and everything on the channel possible. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support this channel or everything that's happening on the channel, then you can go over to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap, and I hope you guys have a fantastic 2020, and I'll see you guys in the next one.